we will be moving on to the big one, President. So, roll the video.
The role of President is very far-encompassing in the fact that you do look after almost every aspect of the union, whether that's facilitating the other officers in achieving their goals for the year, or being a direct link for students and the university. And if students have any concerns, they can come directly to you. That's what you should be there for, to support students in anything they should need. And then, if it should be appropriate, signpost them to the appropriate officer or staff lead in any particular matter. My role, as I see it, as I've completed it, or will be completing it this year, is helping the rest of the exec in anything they should need in facilitating their goals, helping with the changes that are coming in for next year, and make sure that they're happy, because a happy executive means a happy union at the end of the day. The role of President is incredibly important, mainly because you are the tie in between everyone. So everyone can come to you for advice, and everyone should come to you for advice. You shouldn't be able to solve everyone's problems, but you should be able there to listen, because that's what's needed some of the time, whether that's staff, students, or the rest of the exec, high-level volunteers. It's really important to get yourself out there. It's really important to be visible. So walking around campus, having lunch with different people, don't sit behind your desk. I try not to contain myself behind my desk. I like to go out and meet people, talk to people, even that's just a 5-minute chat in the office next door. It's incredibly important to put yourself out there, because at the end of the day you want people to know that you are there for them, to support them, to listen to them, and help them wherever they should need it.
Well, it's the big one. In the studio with me right now is Luke Wheeler and Salome Dore. How are you both?
Great, thank you. Yourself?
Amazing.
Well, do take your 1-minute opening statements away.
Who's first?
You can go first, Luke.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Luke Wheeler and I'm one of your presidential candidates. Before we begin, I'd like to highlight 3 topics that I think are really important to me and hopefully to everyone else. Firstly, I think I'll bring up one of my manifesto points that I think is the strongest one, the development of student leaders. The success of the union depends on the student leaders that we are developing right now. And this will result in, it's essential, because it results in better participation, communication, engagement, and much more, which I'd like to explore tonight. Secondly, should I be elected, I'm really looking forward to bringing in a new and a fun personality into the union, and I'd really like to bring in my ideas and things that I've learned to really engage with the students, because I'm very much one of you, and I've really enjoyed the student life here. What's the third point? Damn, it's always going to happen. I'll finish there. Thank you very much, and enjoy the show.
It's my job, isn't it? Salome.
Hi, I'm Salome Dore and I'm running to be your next union president. Throughout my time at Loughborough, I got involved in nearly all the section of the union, and I've been on the executive team for the past 2 years, the current Wealth and Diversity Executive Officer, which means I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge about everything, and it's needed in such a time of change. My main points are around transparency, representation and disengaged students. I think there's a lot of unheard voices around campus, especially student staff, the venue staff, as well as postgraduate, London and college. And that's one of my main points. I actually want to go and see a student out there and ask for feedback, what they want us to do, because our demographic has been changing a lot. So yeah, I'm really excited to debate today and see what both of our ideas are.
Okay, so we'll start with a bit of a broader question about elections and representation. Every executive member comes in with aims to deal with these issues. You both mentioned them, in fact. Increasing engagement of the students as a whole, that sort of thing. What would you do differently in order to achieve this?
I think it's not necessarily what I do differently, it's that maybe myself as a person is different. So coming in with the personality and creating really good relationships and working well together as a team, and really pushing down the levels, the good communication will cause good participation and engagement. I think something I'd like to highlight is the points in my manifesto are all very, very fluid and interchangeable. So me saying I want to increase communication is probably a long-term goal. It's not going to happen right away. If we can develop student leaders now, and they become better in their roles, then they take on roles higher up than the ones they're currently in. and then again the next year, and you've got people that have become really good at communicating and engaging with students.
Yeah, definitely. I think I know it's a point that's been raised in a lot of President Manifesto for the past few years, and it's not really been working out the way we want to. And I think the way to move forward is actually going out there and asking students. So one of my manifesto points is about doing drop-in hours during the week where I can just go in different departments and actually engage with students, talk with them directly. And I also know that in the strategy from the Union to 2025, there's the idea of surveys. That's also one thing I want to bring, actually ask students for feedback and what they want and what they expect from the Union, and make sure that they know that of what we do, but do it the way that they want us.
So let's go and talk about your manifestos then. So first, you, Salome. A huge factor, obviously, for the incoming president is developing the new union building. No part of your manifesto discussed this. What were the reasons for this not being in your manifesto?
So, to me, that's not the... It's a really important thing, and I know I'm going to work on it, but it's something that's already happening, so I didn't feel like it was necessary for me to add in my manifesto, because I know that's something I'm going to work on. I also know about the union building being split up, and I know that we're going to get Whitworth for the PO, and I already know about all of this. So I felt like that wasn't needed for me to add it, because that's not my idea, that's just happening. So I just want to make sure that I've been working already as the welfare EO to look at disability students to make sure that it's as accessible as we can do it. So I already know I'm going to work on it. I didn't feel like it was, I should put it in my 250 words.
So obviously you did mention this in your manifesto, but obviously you do mention this, the splitting of the union up, throughout the campus. Surely this would just cause chaos?
Well, I don't think so. I met with Richard Taylor before campaigning started, just to see if I could maybe get some little gems of information, almost accidentally. And he was really keen for the idea to spread out across campus, and one of the things was to put offices elsewhere, and I wasn't too sure about that because it kind of takes away from trying to have collaboration between offices and sections. There's definitely scope to have union services geographically split, and as you say, it's already happening. The PO is being developed. If plans could be put into place to have something union-based there as well, that's not just an outlet, then that would be great, because you've got, at the very least, you can have services for signposting, where people can walk 5 minutes if they're maybe towards West Park, rather than having to walk 20, where they might not be bothered to.
On that as well, when that's been discussed, I've been working in the union. We quite struggle with communication internally, so all the staff it's quite complicated. So I've said already that I don't think we should split the staff into different buildings. However, I think that space could be used for social space, because people don't actually go to the union, and it would definitely be good to have like a reception with signposting and maybe a coffee, and just somewhere where people actually want to hang out, which is union based.
It's certainly, to have the union services split across campus really helps build towards that sort of doctrine that we work on recently, of becoming more sort of student facing, which I know has been worked on certainly this year, but that would absolutely be a big boost towards that tactic, I suppose.
Obviously, alongside this as well, there's the idea of communication as well, and you've both mentioned this in your manifestos as well, ensuring that the union stays transparent and student focused. You've both mentioned it in different ways though, so we'll go to you first, Luke. You said that you want to communicate events and provide different input. What does this mean, and how do you do this in an under-resourced union?
Different input is... I'm trying to work out that particular point. So when I talk about...
So you said there's often a saturation of ideas, different input is now needed, which I'm confident I can bring.
Right, okay.
What do you mean by different input?
I think it's something that's kind of been quite important for me during my year as a chair, as someone that has been trying to engage with, we have a hall of 519, but you have, 350 opt-ins, right? Something that has been really, really big for me is putting personality into it and making sure that everyone on my committee puts their personality into everything they write and type.
So are you really just running as a personality rather than running on policy?
I'm running as a person that people should want to represent them. I don't want to run as just ideas on paper.
And Salome, in yours, you say you want to release termly reports as your sort of communication outlet. At least it's not sort of a personality thing, but it still is different there. But are these termly reports enough? Is reporting students just once a term satisfactory for a union?
So I put termly reports in my manifesto because I know how busy we all get, and I prefer to say that I'm going to do termly and then actually doing more than saying I'm going to do one every 2 weeks, because I know that won't happen. But I also know that if there's like a big change in education, for example, I want the education EO to just do a report straight away and put it out there. So it's just all about communicating, and I want to do it in videos because I think that's how students engage more on social media nowadays. So it's just any changes. So for example, the night bus that's been blowing on social media, I would do a video to release it and say this is what's happening and this is the reasons behind it. We welcome your feedback. Just to be open and communicate with students so they don't feel like they can't trust us and they can't tell us what they feel.
Other things blowing up on social media right now is the London situation. Obviously now we don't have a permanent member of staff, well we only have one permanent member of staff down in London. How are we going to reintegrate London as part of the LSU family?
I think that's, knowing that all students at London are postgrads, it's probably a touchy subject for postgrads right now, and we can maybe save it for later for a more relevant.
I mean, you're president of the Students' Union. It includes postgrads as well. That's
it does.
a significant portion of
I
membership.
definitely want to bring it up, just probably not in relation to this question, although probably do, because we have 800 students down there that are postgrads. The staff situation, I concede, I don't know a great deal about. I have heard about it, but I haven't looked too much into it. I do have things I want to say about postgrads, but that's more as a total postgrad.
Okay, do you want to say that now then?
Sure. Why not? It's not quite fully London related.
That's fine, it's still postgraduate.
Okay, so I think the situation we have with postgrads right now is a bit of a crisis. The situation is that they feel extremely underrepresented. I went to the postgrad party on Saturday, had a wonderful time. I met Leah Henriksen, who is the postgrad president, or one of two, and she said that actually it is underrepresentation and people not listening to their concerns and problems, that is their main issue, and they all feel very uniformly the same way. I think the reason that's there is, I've put a little bit of thought into this, thankfully, is that I think there's an assumption when you have postgrad or PhD mature students come into uni or become postgrad students from being an undergraduate, we just assume that if they have an issue or a problem, because they're adults, they can sort of sort it themselves, and they don't know about the services, if there are any, that can help them out properly. I admit I didn't put. Well, I'm not admitting, it's a fact that I didn't mention postgrads in my manifesto, and in fact only one person did, as far as I know, albeit maybe briefly. I'm not sure, I haven't read it, I'm afraid. But I am very, very, very open to the idea of listening, and I know we say that all the time. Candidates always mention that they're going to listen, and it's an empty promise quite often. But if I'm looking at my schedule, I want to be setting aside maybe an hour every week or 2 weeks just to have people talk to me, and a representative of the postgrad, such as the president, to bring up issues. Okay,
so you didn't mention it in your manifesto either. How are you going to improve the situation of London and postgrad students?
Yeah, so basically about London, being on exec this year, obviously everyone knows that the union is in deficit. We didn't have enough money to actually have full-time staff except the student voice staff which is currently there. And also the people that are actually 2 members of staff at the start of the year said that they didn't have enough resources to actually do things. So at the moment I don't think we're in the place where we can afford to have full-time staff. One thing that I know I want to bring though is as soon as we do handover, actually put people actually put in executive officer and section chairs in their calendar that they're going to go to London and buy the tickets, because everyone on exec is like, I'm going to go to London loads and it's going to be great, but then you don't because you're just too busy. So if you put it from the start of the year and you say you're going to do that, and then you know that you have something that you're going and you set up things to do, you actually engage with London students, and it's actually increasing visibility. Postgraduate wise, I know that obviously the executive officer is going away, but also know that there's got the president and as well the committee. Having worked with mature students this year as part of Welfare and Diversity, I'm really open to listening to their needs and their wants, and I would definitely try to meet as much as possible with the postgraduate president as well as with the college president.
So both of you, obviously, exec management is going to be a huge job next year. Obviously, the exec structure is changing as a whole.
Sure.
How are you going to manage this new executive team, and what are you going to do?
So obviously it's changing a lot, and the fact that I know how it used to work, I think that was going to help me figure out how it's going to work. And obviously I've been on exec for the past 2 years, and this is when all the changes and all the discussion around how it's going to change were made, so I was part of them and I know how it was going to work. So I think the main thing that I want to do is make sure that also section chairs are involved. I really don't want them to feel like they're left out, because I think that's so important. So I know this is the VP role, but I'll make sure as a president that they feel part of the team, because they're still as important as anyone else on the executive team.
And what about you, Luke?
No, I'm in complete agreement. I had like a sort of buzz sentence prepared, but it's basically that in summary.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's all good. It is literally that. So, I think a disadvantage of the exec structure is that we're going to have the section chairs, which were, even formerly known as minor sabbaticals, which is not the greatest start to their feeling of their role and title. And now we've got rid of sabbatical and major and minor and whatnot, and they're section chairs. But as you say, to have them not feel like they're part of the team would be awful. And in fact, because in a sense, the executive team, as it has been previous to this year, is kind of like a larger version of a committee and a team working together. You'd hate to lose that. You'd hate for it to just become a small group of 5.
Mm-hmm.
We'll put that to JC's now, where Ollie and Rahul have a question for you.
I don't actually think Rahul does. I think it's just me.
I have many questions.
It's not your turn. So obviously President Matheson, as far as we're aware, was the first non-hall chair president for a while. I could well be wrong, but I think I'm right. So since Friday, a lot of people have been calling this the clash of Loughborough's 2 biggest demographics. What do you think are the strengths and weaknesses of both of your relevant backgrounds? So Wheeler is coming from halls and Salome from non-halls background.
Shotgun.
Fair enough.
So I think mainly it's being a chair. If we're going in and answering your question like this, being a chair has mainly been the leading side of it, and running such a successful committee that's had like incredible results. My favourite number to give out, which a lot of people are they don't hate it, but they might be a bit jealous, is 55. We had 55 hustings candidates sign up to be on committee, and it's been incredible, leading a kind of a hall for the year where people they essentially want to be you, they want to be on the team that you've been running. The other sort of advantage I think I have from being so heavily involved in halls is halls are the biggest feeder of participants and student volunteers and leaders. 4,500 people living at halls, and I can draw on those experiences to kind of and extrapolate them and apply them to other feeding sort of sections and groups of people.
So I think the fact that I haven't been a hall chair is really not a problem. I've been involved in nearly all the sections, so I actually know them from the union side, not from a hall from a hall side. Having seen Rahul this year, you can tell that he actually really cares about every section because he's been involved in most of them, and I think that's the most important. Being able to say, I've done one of your projects, I've been on a trip away, I've done media, and so you actually understand how things work and you're actually really passionate about them. So I think this is the experience I've got, is that I've actually been involved in all of the section, which means that if a section heads or anyone just say, oh, I feel like we're not represented enough, I actually know how it is from the background of it. Yeah, and of course, I've been on different committees, and I'm obviously the chair of the Welfare and Diversity Committee, so I also know how to be a leader and how to have a team and make them work well together.
Questions have been asked about both of you in terms of personality. And I'm going to raise one of these each with you now. We'll start with you, Salome. In this role, you have to have a personal and professional divide. People within the union have questioned this. Are you really a team player, or do you simply push your own agenda for your own personal gain?
I think I'm actually a team player. I think I know what I think, and I just say what I think. But I also know that if like everyone has good arguments against what I think, I will actually listen and understand it. Obviously, I think welfare has been underrepresented, and that's probably why maybe sometimes I look like I'm just pushing my own agenda, but just because I think that the mental health of the students and the minority groups are so important, and we need to push it more. And I think, to be honest, I think that worked pretty well this year. So I think the only time I will push things for personal gain is if I think it's actually important to students.
And Luke, sorry. Yeah.
Who's that?
Are you two? Well, let's face it. You're embroiled in lad culture here in Loughborough. Are you able to lead a students' union when you're embroiled in this lad culture? Do you really take things seriously?
A question of maturity.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how to answer this question any better than the way I'm about to, but I'm not getting deep. I'm not getting all like, I don't want any sympathy or anything like that. Is it appropriate to give some background of myself?
Ideally, keep it short.
Sure. Okay. And forgive me, I'm not bringing it up for any other reason than to answer the question. My brother died about 5 or 6 years ago from brain cancer. My dad has had a mental disability for as long as I've been alive. Family has been a bit of a struggle, and I was put into a boarding school, and I was there for 5 years before I came here, and I had 5 charities support me, which were Buttle, the Reedham Trust, the Reeds Foundation, the Worshipful Company of Saddlers, and the Royal National Children's Foundation, of which I am now a member of their advisory board, and they are supporting 500 children that are disadvantaged to get them a good education. If I need to be serious, I can be. But the role that I've been in and the things I've experienced and my time at Loughborough has been just extremely fun. And there haven't been many opportunities where I've needed to show maturity. There have been, but none that are sort of needed to be publicly known and addressed. I'm happy with how much fun I have, and that's uni life for me.
Well then, we'll pop down to Rahul downstairs in JC's for his question.
Right, so both going back a bit into the beginning of the debate, both of you talked about or did talk about the new union building and the relationship between the union and the university. So one big discussion has been co-location of services, so combining things that the university does and the things that union does, considering it's a massive university investment, because I think it's no secret we have no money, that the university is funding the majority of the building. In your minds, what are the ideal services that we would co-locate into the new union building?
Salome.
So, from experience, I think the things that are really important in student services, so anything from student finance, mental health and counselling team, disability services and all of that, I think that's something that a lot of students come to the union for because they don't really know where to go. But actually, all we can do really is listen and then be like, I'm really sorry, you're going to have to go to student services, which is Bridgeman, which is like a 5 minutes walk. So I think that's something that could be really useful to actually just put together and work as a team on it. Yeah.
I don't think there's much else to it. I think you've covered it. In terms of where services are, we are quite compact. Like, yeah, we're a huge campus, but most of the stuff is in the same place, and putting it closer together to the best extent that we can. most services co-located as possible, arguably, if that's the route we're taking. Great, but I don't think it would be a huge problem if we can't fit everything in there. You just walk 2 or 3 minutes and you've got whatever else you need.
Obviously, there's no point in having a new union or any union at all if there's no engagement within it. And I think it's fair to say that engagement has been declining over the last few years. What would you individually do to rectify student engagement and to improve it, Luke?
So this is my big main thing, is the developing the student leaders. Because I think if we have people who come into their role, they probably got it easily. They might want it just to be on the team, or just for whatever perks being on that team gets. And these are the sort of people who are supposed to engage with 100 people each. And if they're not very good at their role, because they haven't been trained properly or shown how to do it, then that 100 becomes 20. And we have a massive decline in, I mean, it's just an arbitrary figure. And we have a massive decline in engagement. But as soon as these people are trained appropriately and shown how to perform well and succeed in their roles, then we have engagement. We have, around 2,000 student volunteer, student leader positions. It will be a big task, but it's extremely necessary. And the huge drop in engagement in the last 2 or 3 years, let's say, is a big issue. It's a big crisis.
So I think the engagement is more lacking, that students think that the union is just around getting drunk and partying. They don't actually know what else we do. Or some of them do, but then they're already involved, so, so I think it's all about my idea of representation. I feel like students don't feel like they're represented. Like, we listen to their ideas and we listen to what they want us to do. So it's all about what I've talked about earlier. It's just about communicating with students, asking them what they want. Because the demographic has changed so much, obviously, with Loughborough being a better uni in ranking. And now students are more focused on their studies. And that's something that we're not really that good at in the union, providing stuff for students who like these kind of things. So just work on this other things that a student wants, that is not getting drunk.
Before we pop down to JC's for another question, with the current executive, what do you feel individually are the biggest shortcomings or failings of the current team? Salome. Bear in mind you're on it as well.
The exact song, no, I'm joking. I think the biggest fail is, that's a hard question. To be fair, having been on exec for the past 2 years, I think we work really well together, and we talk to each other, and we tell each other how we feel. One thing, however, that I do think that we haven't done well is, obviously there's been loads of changes, and a lot of the time the executive are not aware of anything that's happening. So the whole internal restructure, we're untold. We haven't had the opportunity to make decisions as an exec team, which I think is bad, because that's what we elected for. So as a president, that's something I want to bring forward and make sure that everyone is involved in the decision, and not only the president or the union director. I actually want to make sure that the 5 exec are involved, and if necessary, the section chairs, because I think that's something that if you don't involve the exec, then how can you make sure that students feel represented?
Luke, what do you feel the biggest failings are currently?
Well, I wouldn't want to offend anyone.
Yeah, sorry guys.
I think the time that I spend in the union and doing union-based things it's as fun as I make it. But that's probably not the case for a lot of people, and I think we just need to move. At the end of the day, the union is sort of by the students, for the students, but we've lost, or we're losing the by the students bit. We have fewer venue staff being employed, and more sort of permanent adult staff that might not know what it's like to be a student at Loughborough and know what people want. And that's pretty much it. We're just losing the by the students thing, and that's one of the things that when I came here I realised was so prominent, and it's kind of trailing off a little bit. At least, I mean, I probably have no tangible evidence, but it's kind of the vibe, it's the feeling I'm getting.
Well, now you've criticised the current executive, we'll
Yes.
go down to them. JC.
Well, that was actually the question I was going to ask, so thank you, Josh. So I think building on that, as a leader, what I found is important to recognise kind of your limitations so you can help the team and the team can support you, because it's a two-way street. So what do you think your greatest weakness is as a leader going into the role? How will this affect you, and how do you plan to mitigate the effect of this?
Luke.
I think my biggest weakness is probably that I haven't been, massively or heavily engaged with so many sections, and I think I've gone into quite a lot of depth with the things I have done, but I haven't branched out and looked more broadly at union services. However, I do recognise, and this is probably the second part of the question, I do recognise that I'm not some omnipotent, all-powerful, fear hammer-wielding, infinity stone collecting presidential candidate, and I've got a team that know their section way better than I ever will, you'd hope, and those are the people that I think will sort of mitigate my shortcomings if we work together and we have strong relationships.
So I think my biggest weakness is probably not my mental health as such, but I do take things, I can get upset quite easily with things, but one thing that I've really learned this year, and especially recently, it took me quite a while, is that the best way for me to deal with things is to take a break out of it and just go back to it. And I think if you ask anyone that's been working with me, they can tell the difference between me at the start would just get upset about a little comment about anything related to me, to now where I'll just deal with it on my own and then go back to it and actually listen and, listen to what they want to say and say how it makes me feel. So, yeah, I think that's probably my biggest weakness, but I know that I'm working on it, and I think I'm getting better at it.
We'll now go down to our VP Affairs and Development, Ollie Norman, in J6.
Yeah, so obviously with the restructure coming in, I'd be intrigued to know what the two of you, or how you see the role as Vice President working next year, and how would you use them? Would you be quite hands-on with the main exec, or would you let them kind of roam free?
So for the VPs, I think one thing that is quite important is that they're going to have so much more on that they currently have. So between the democracy bit, the finance and commercial bit, which is really, really important, and also looking after the section, I think they've got a lot on. So as a president, of course, I'll be busy, so I'm not saying that I'm going to help them with everything, but I can just kind of identify at the start of the year what they want help with and how we can work together. And also I want to make sure to create a personal relationship with section chairs. I don't want them to feel like only the VP talk to them, but I also let them do the performance management and talking to them about their ideas, their plan, and make sure they're represented.
As much as you want to let people do the job they were elected for, I think this is, yes, almost every year there are changes to the executive structure here or at any other uni, you never know. But this is definitely one of the biggest, one of the most drastic changes that we've had, and it's going to need certainly some oversight and maybe a little bit more hands-on than just oversight. And yeah, be quite a busy role being president, I'd imagine. But I think time definitely needs to be set aside to make sure that this change is going to work. This transition is smooth and easy, and more importantly that they're all happy and they know what they're doing.
Also adding on that, I think the idea, for example, of them having more work, we can definitely work with staff. So, for example, Sue Lucas for democracy, Gary Chamberlain for finance, to make sure that they're actually supported by the two teams, so they don't feel overwhelmed with it. I think that's important to remember that as the president, you're not the only person here to support them, but just to make sure that everyone in the union are aware and can help.
Brother Hall's got a couple more questions he wants to throw up here to Aura.
Surprising.
Okay, so I've got two questions, very specific questions at both candidates based on things you said or what I've seen from your manifestos. So Salome, you've talked about surveys, and while they're very useful tools, in terms of doing them regularly, looking at obviously the lack of resources we have in terms of especially looking at data processing in the marketing team, who's processing these surveys? And also then to Luke.
We're having microphone issue. Can you repeat?
Yeah, sorry, we're having microphone issues. Okay, so again, Salome, you talked about surveys. While they're very useful tools to gathering information, looking at the lack of resources, especially in the marketing team, especially with data processing, in these surveys, who's processing information and who's conveying that to the relevant people? And then to Luke, Salome has obviously talked extensively about her experience of being on the exec, and you've talked about bringing in a fresh face and fresh approach to the executive. So how do you plan to fill the gaps in your knowledge on your opponent?
There we go. Salome, we start.
The data, sorry. Back on it. Cool. So the survey, I know that marketing team has so much on right now. What I also know is that when we've talked about budget this year, we did talk about getting someone else for marketing team. I think they've got way too much work on, and it's probably one of the priority for me to make sure that the marketing team has enough people to actually get on, because how can we be better at communication if the team doesn't have time to communicate as well? So I'm not saying that I'm going to get someone especially for that position, but I'm just saying that if we get someone else, at least there will be less work for the rest of the marketing team. And if we don't have enough money to get an actual new person, definitely get someone like student staff, like part-time, to do a few hours here and there and help. I know they currently have one or a few maybe, but just more opportunities, and it will also be an opportunity for a student to learn more about marketing.
I wouldn't call them gaps in my knowledge. I'd call it like another treasure chest over here to be filled with more knowledge. And I think quite simply, not every president has been on exec for 2 years before, and they've learned through changeover or even just more than the 2 or 3 week period of changeover, their role and what to do in it. So I think, should I be elected, I should be fine, because most other presidents have been.
Well, obviously next year it's been very different, regardless of what happens. I think, experience somewhat goes out the window next year, because obviously the exec structure is completely changing. How should your relationship be with this new executive team?
Perfect. Okay, great. One of the points that I forgot to say in my opening statement was how I'm going to stress the importance of building strong working, but also casual relationships with the executive team and the union, but also, just as an aside, external partners. I hate to say it like this, but I make friends quite easily, I think, and I've already got quite a strong, building a strong relationship with some of the candidates already, obviously some of which are hopefully going to be elected, so we've got a good start there. I think it's really important that the team is a group of friends way before they're a group of colleagues, and that will be my relationship with them, because it's much easier to work with friends than colleagues, and well, I suppose until you have a really pressing issue, but hopefully there won't be many of those.
Hopefully not. How are you going to implement a successful year?
So I'm actually quite the opposite of Luke, of what he just said. Obviously, I wanted to be friends, and this year we're really good friends, but also being with colleagues before being friends, because it's about the day-to-day job. Hanging out later, having fun, that's great, and that's what we do, and I love it. But it's also about working together and making sure that, especially as a president, because I know in the past it hasn't been the case, that the rest of the team respect you and feel like they can trust you with everything that you do. So I think it's just putting this in at the start, that you're here as a friend and you're here to have fun with them and you're here to become best friends forever, but also that when it comes to work-based thing, sometimes it's going to be tough, and it has been this year, but when decision needs to be made, no one should take things personally, because when you're friends, you tend to take things really personally. And I think that's one important thing is, I'm friend with everyone this year, but we also know the difference between when we're work mode and when we're friend mode, and I think that's really important.
There we go. We've got one final question for each of you. We'll start with you, Salome. In an interview with Label magazine last week, you said, and I quote, "Writing a manifesto for president is really hard, because I personally know that looking at Rahul this year, the president doesn't do anything of such, just helps others." What did you really mean by that? Do you think Rahul's been a bad president?
Sorry, Rahul, I love you. No, I don't think Rahul has been a bad president. I think seeing seeing how busy he is, because he's got so many university things to do, he's got so many things to do, that I feel like as a president you can help people to implement things. So for example, mental health was on his manifesto, and me and him worked together, and he supports me, but it's me doing it because it's related to my role. And it will be the same. For example, I talk about food option, that's more of a VP thing, and I'm aware of that, but that's more, I want to do this, but I'm going to help you as much as I can to do it. So yeah, I think, I'm not saying anyone's been bad. I actually think Rahul has been doing a great job considering all the things that have happened this year. I just know that a lot of the time President just put, I'm going to do that and do that and do that, and then you're in the role and you can't do anything because you're just here to support your team and make sure they achieve their goal.
And a final one from you, Luke. You've had 2 campaign bans so far this year. One for allowing your social media accounts to be made visible too early, and another for your warden promoting you. These both are clearly against the election rules.
Of course.
If you can't control either of these 2 things, how do you expect to control a whole executive?
Good question. The first one was an accident. Of course, I'm accepting responsibility for it. It's a good question, but I don't know how much weight it carries, because none of them have been, I don't know how to word this right.
We haven't got much time left, so
no,
ideally...
I know. In a way, I don't know if I should say that. I don't mind the bans I've received so far, because they've been sort of worth it. But I think if we're kind of applying the bans to controlling an executive team, I think it's quite a different situation, because this is campaigning we're talking about to get a job and to get votes and for people to like you. When it comes to actually working in the job, it's a different story. Okay, personally, my answer to the question is I don't think that linking the campaign bans to the controlling of the executive team is...
Okay then. Well, we'll leave this interview there. We have your final statements, please. Luke.
I've said so much that I've forgotten the rest of my
Well, you've only got
statement.
20 seconds left, so...
Oh, that's okay. Thanks for listening. I want you to remember that you're voting as much for a person as much as you're voting for their ideas. This person's got to represent you, and they've got to lead a job and lead a team and use their skills to do it.
Yeah, so it was really great to be able to discuss my ideas and my plans for the next year, if elected, obviously. One thing that I really want to point out is, if I'm elected, I will be about transparency, being honest, and actually listening to students. I want students to come and talk to me about the issues that they're facing, and that's my main thing. I'll be around campus during the week. Please ask me any question online or in person. I'm really happy to answer your questions. And remember to, if you want to, vote Salome Dore for Union President.
Well, there we go. A big presidential debate there. We're now going to head down to JC's, where the panel are. Thank you very much.
Once again, absolute racket in JC's from the support here from the campaign teams. I've got Conrad Noble, who is Luke Wheeler's proposer, and I've got Leo Yang, who is Salome's proposer. So, guys, how do you think that interview went? It was very personality-focused. What did you guys think?
I think that's actually the big issue this year. I think a lot of people are looking at the 2 candidates. There's a whole new restructure that not everyone knows about. So to actually look at the people behind the manifesto is actually the best way to look at it, to actually see who would be the best person to lead the new restructure.
Yeah, like I think it was Rahul or Ollie said earlier, you have polarised Loughborough in half. You've got the whole idea of being sensible and the whole idea of promoting fun, but I would just say that if I didn't have absolute faith in Salome, I wouldn't have proposed her.
Great. Rahul has asked a lot of questions, but now I have a question for him. When people are looking at the voting page, what do you think is going to be the decider? What do you think they're going to be thinking? Because we've got some very, very qualified, very good candidates. What is that decider going to be?
Well, so I think it's interesting because obviously in this role you meet with the senior leadership team from the university quite regularly, and I was actually asked a question a couple of times by a few people about, so which way do you think it's going to go? And I honestly at this point don't know. So they're very qualified in very different ways. They have, I think, quite solid manifestos. They explain themselves well. They've been challenged, and I think they've handled the challenges very well. So I think it's going to come down to the why, in all honesty. It's going to come down to a combination of what this election's all about. The combination of solidarity of ideas, how sound those ideas are, and also how popular they come across, because you're not just running with ideas, you have to be approachable. They both talked about it in terms of being approached by students. It needs to be a compatibility between the two. So I think it's going to come down right to the why. I don't think it can be decided on paper. People need to be watching these two candidates, thinking about how they can approach them, whether they've got good ideas, whether they can explain them in person. I think this is one of the best matchups in terms of limited candidates we've had in a while.
Interesting. The position of president will have to engage with the restructure and carry that through this year. Do you think the candidates' in response to the restructure was sufficient, and do you think they are ready to take that on?
Yes, I do. I think both are equally knowledgeable about why we did what we did from last year's exec and why I carried it on. I'm sure they can both find flaws. I'm sure they can both find flaws, but I do believe that they know the justifications behind why we got rid of certain roles and seek to carry that on. I'm hoping they don't tear it up and do another one. It would make me quite sad, but I'm confident in their abilities to carry it forward.
Great. Over to you, Natalie.
So now I think we're going to roll to our last VT, single transferable vote, and how it works.
So it's that time of year again, and elections are upon us. We wanted to take this opportunity to explain to you how your vote will work. This year, we'll be using a variant of the single transferable vote system. When you log on to elections.lsu.co.uk, you will be presented with the list of candidates running for positions. You will then rank them in order of preference, but don't forget that RON, reopen nominations, is always an option. Here is how your votes are counted. It all starts with a quota. This is what a candidate needs to get to be elected. The quota is 50% of the total votes cast plus 1. If no candidate reaches the quota, the least popular candidate is eliminated and their portion of the votes is redistributed based on their voter's second choice. This process will continue until a candidate reaches the quota and is therefore elected.
Fantastic. What a night it's been.
Absolutely incredible candidates, I think. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.